For months, perhaps even years, Demet Özdemir had remained silent. Every time her name was linked to Can Yaman, she smiled politely, changed the subject, or simply walked away. The public saw a woman who had moved on, confident, radiant, focused on her career. But what they didn't see was the weight she had carried, hidden carefully behind that smile. That weight had a name, and it was Can. On that day, when she finally sat down for a new interview, one she hadn't planned to be emotional, something unexpected happened. The host asked her, "If you could say one thing to the person who disappointed you the most, what would it be?" Demet froze. Her eyes blinked rapidly, her voice trembled. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then, with a faint whisper, she said, "I'd say, I'm sorry. But you let me down." The interviewer didn't need to ask who she meant. Everyone knew. The studio lights reflected off the small tears gathering in her eyes. For the first time in years, Demet wasn't an actress performing a role. She was a woman speaking from a wound that never fully healed. Behind that short, painful confession lay a story too deep for headlines, a story of two people who had shared something real, something intense, and something the world wouldn't stop talking about. But fame, pride, and the relentless noise of the public had slowly poisoned what they once had. When Erkenci Kes ended, fans believed it was only the beginning for Can and Demet. Their chemistry was undeniable, their bond, electric. Yet, as cameras stopped rolling, reality took over. Can left for Italy. Demet stayed in Istanbul. Both said it was for work, but deep down, they knew there was more to it. Promises were made, to call, to visit, to stay in touch, but as weeks turned into months, those promises faded into silence. Demet tried to reach out at first. She sent messages that went unanswered. She watched interviews where Can spoke about new projects, new beginnings, never mentioning her name again. The woman who once laughed beside him now watched him from afar, wondering if she had simply been a chapter he had already closed. So when she finally whispered those words, "I'm sorry, but Can Yaman let me down completely," it wasn't anger speaking. It was sorrow. The kind that comes from realizing that even the strongest connection can crumble under the weight of distance and pride. In that moment, Demet wasn't the glamorous actress. She was just a woman remembering the man who once made her believe in forever. In the weeks following that silent confession, Demet's words spread like wildfire. Clips from the interview flooded social media, her trembling voice echoing in millions of feeds around the world. Fans wrote endless comments. Some defending her, others asking, what really happened between them? But for Demet, none of it mattered anymore. What hurt wasn't the noise of the internet, it was the silence that came from the one person she wished would reach out, Can Yaman. Back when everything started to fall apart, it wasn't because of one big fight. It was because of absence. Can had left for Italy to pursue new projects, new horizons. "It's just a few months," he had said, smiling, touching her hand before leaving. "You'll barely notice I'm gone." But months became a year. Messages grew shorter. Calls came less often. Soon, they stopped altogether. Demet, still filming in Istanbul, watched from the sidelines as Can's life transformed. New photos, new co-stars, new headlines, all without her. She didn't blame his success, she had always admired his ambition. What broke her was realizing that the man who once shared every small victory with her now didn't even tell her when something big happened. There was one night she would never forget. It was late, nearly 2 a.m. She sat on her balcony, phone in hand, typing and deleting the same message over and over again, "I miss you. I don't even know if you care anymore." But she never sent it. Instead, she just stared at his profile picture, the one with that confident half-smile she once knew too well, and whispered into the quiet of the night, "Where are you, Can?" The tabloids didn't help. They began twisting every move they made. Demet jealous of Can's Italian co-star, one headline screamed. Another claimed, Can Yaman replaces Demet with European actress. Each article dug a little deeper into her wounds. And yet, she kept her silence, thinking, maybe if I stay quiet, people will forget. Maybe he'll remember me when the noise stops. But the noise never stopped. Every interview he gave, every appearance he made, she watched, hoping for a single word. Just one acknowledgement that what they had wasn't all in her head. But he said nothing. The more he stayed silent, the more she began to question everything, their moments, their late-night talks, their promises. Had it all been real? Or had she fallen for a version of him that existed only between takes, under the lights of a camera? And yet, even as she asked herself those painful questions, she couldn't bring herself to hate him. Because deep down, she still believed that somewhere inside him, the man she once knew, the man who laughed with her until sunrise, still existed. It was a cold evening in Istanbul when Demet's phone finally lit up with a familiar name, Can Yaman. For a second, she thought her eyes were playing tricks on her. Months had passed without a word, not even a polite "how are you?" And now, suddenly, there it was, his name on her screen, glowing in the dark. Her heart raced. Her hands trembled as she opened the message. It wasn't long or poetic. Just a few words that hit her harder than she expected. "Hey. I saw your interview." That was it. Nothing more. No apology, no explanation, no warmth. Just a line that felt both distant and intimate. She stared at it for minutes, trying to decide whether to reply or let it sit there, unread and unanswered, the same way he had once left hers. But Demet wasn't that kind of person. She typed slowly, carefully, afraid of saying too much. "Then you know how I felt. I didn't say it to hurt you." He read it almost immediately. The scene mark appeared. Then nothing. Minutes turned into an hour. An hour into a night. She waited, but no answer came. That night, she didn't cry. Not at first. She sat in silence, her heart heavy but strangely calm. It wasn't until dawn, when the city outside began to wake, that the tears finally came, not because of what he said, but because of what he didn't. The next morning, the internet exploded again. Screenshots of her old interviews, old photos of them together, videos of their laughter on set. Fans were reliving their story as if it were a series that never ended. Yet behind those clips, Demet lived the reality of being forgotten by someone who once promised forever. Friends told her to ignore it, to focus on herself. But how do you ignore a ghost that still lives in your heart? Every time she tried to move on, something pulled her back, a song, a memory, a random post with his name. One day, she went to the same cafe where they used to meet after shoots. It was raining, the kind of soft, gray rain that always reminded her of him. She sat by the window, stirring her coffee, watching raindrops race down the glass. She could almost hear his voice, teasing her for always taking too long to drink it. For a brief moment, she smiled. Then the realization hit, he wasn't coming back. Not this time. When she got home that evening, she opened her phone again. Still no reply. She scrolled through their old conversations, the jokes, the late-night confessions, the plans that never happened. And at the bottom of the chat, one message stood out, written by him long ago: "No matter what happens, you'll always have me." She whispered to herself, "You broke that, Ken, completely." Weeks passed after that message that went nowhere. The world had already turned the page, but Demet hadn't. Every new project she joined, every red carpet smile she forced. Behind it all, there was still a silent ache. And then, out of nowhere, the silence broke again, this time, not from her. It was during an Italian talk show appearance that Can Yaman finally decided to speak. The interviewer, known for pushing boundaries, asked bluntly, "People still talk about you and Demet Özdemir. Did you see her emotional interview?" Ken hesitated. He looked down, adjusted his jacket, and for the first time in a long while, his voice softened. "Yes, I saw it," he said quietly. "And I understand her." The audience went silent. Cameras zoomed in on his face, serious, vulnerable, almost regretful. He continued, sometimes in life, you let people down without meaning to. Distance, work, noise, they change everything. But some people remain in your heart, no matter what you say or don't say. It wasn't an apology. But it wasn't denial either. It was something in between, half honesty, half defense. And for Demet, watching from home, it was everything and nothing at the same time. When she saw the clip, she didn't cry. She didn't smile. She just sat there, absorbing every word, trying to find herself in his sentences. But what she found instead was a realization: he wasn't the same man she once loved. And maybe, she wasn't the same woman who waited for him either. The media exploded once again. Can Yaman responds to Demet's emotional confession. Headlines flashed across Europe and Turkey. Old fans resurfaced. New rumors spread like wildfire. People speculated that they were secretly in contact again, that there was a chance for reconciliation. But the truth was simpler and sadder. There were no more messages, no more calls, just two people speaking through interviews, both too proud to dial the other's number. For Demet, his words were closure in disguise. She could finally stop wondering if he cared, because now she knew. He did, but not enough to fight. Not enough to stay. That night, she took off her makeup, removed her jewelry, and stood in front of the mirror. For a long time, she just looked at herself. The reflection staring back wasn't the same girl who once waited by the phone. It was a woman who had loved deeply, lost quietly, and learned painfully that not every story gets a second act. She whispered to her reflection, as if speaking to him one last time, "I'm sorry too, Can. But we both let something beautiful slip away." Then she smiled faintly, the kind of smile that comes not from happiness, but from acceptance. And in that quiet room, for the first time in years, Demet Özdemir felt free. Time, as always, kept moving, indifferent to heartbreak, blind to what could have been. Seasons changed. New faces entered their lives. Cameras flashed for other stories, other premieres. And yet, somewhere beneath the noise of fame and routine, both Demet and Can carried a quiet ache, not of love lost, but of words left unsaid. For Demet, healing didn't come suddenly. It was slow, quiet, and often lonely. There were nights she would still wake up from dreams where he was standing beside her, smiling, reaching for her hand, only to open her eyes and see nothing but the faint light from the window. But every time she faced that emptiness, she found herself a little stronger than before. She began writing again, not for a script, not for a show, but for herself. Short letters she would never send. In one of them, she wrote, "You didn't break me, Can. You disappointed me, yes. But you also taught me what real love should never feel like: uncertain, distant, conditional. Maybe that's what growing up means." Those words never left her notebook. But they changed something inside her. The next time she appeared in public, people noticed. She wasn't hiding anymore. Her eyes, though still soft, carried a quiet power. She smiled not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Meanwhile, far away in Rome, Can watched her from a distance, through the same screens that once replayed their laughter. He saw clips of her interviews, photos from her latest series, and that same unmistakable smile. For a man who had built walls of pride, it was the first crack in years. One evening, he sat in his apartment, scrolling through old pictures, behind-the-scenes shots, red carpets, and one photo that stopped him cold, Demet asleep on his shoulder, taken between takes, sunlight spilling across her hair. He remembered that day. He remembered how right it felt, and how carelessly he'd let it all slip away. He whispered to himself, she deserved more. That night, he drafted a message. "You were right. I did let you down. And I'm sorry." But just like Demet once did, he never sent it. He watched the words fade on the screen before locking his phone and staring out the window. The city below was alive, but inside, he felt the silence of what could never be reclaimed. Some loves end with fights. Theirs ended with silence, not because there was nothing left to say, but because both had already said everything through their tears. Months later, fate placed them in the same city again, not by design, but by coincidence. A film festival in Venice. They crossed paths on the red carpet, surrounded by flashing cameras and deafening applause. For a brief second, their eyes met. No words, no gestures. Just two people acknowledging everything that had ever been between them. She smiled softly. He nodded. That was all. But in that small exchange, a story that had haunted millions finally found its quiet ending. Later, when asked by reporters if she had seen Can that night, Demet answered with a calm voice and a serene smile, "Yes. And I hope he's doing well. That's all I've ever wanted." It wasn't bitterness. It wasn't nostalgia. It was peace, the kind that comes when you finally stop chasing answers and start accepting truth. As she walked away under the warm Venetian lights, she felt something lift, the weight of years of confusion, hurt, and waiting. Behind her, the crowd continued to cheer for both of them, but for Demet, the only sound that mattered was the quiet inside her heart. Because for the first time since it all began, she wasn't sorry anymore. She was free.